tell me, if there's only one movie you can watch and rewatch for the rest of your life, what is that one movie gonna be?
Oh, that's a hard one. I'm gonna go with Empire Records because there's so
Empire
many good
Records.
lines in
What?
it, and I haven't seen it in years. It's like the
Okay.
oldest movie. Um,
Who's in this
yeah.
movie? I've never heard of this movie. I'm a movie guy. I never heard of this though.
Oh my God, it's so old. It has. Oh man, I don't even know. It has everybody before
Okay.
they were famous. I'm
Okay.
pretty
Okay.
sure like Reese. Is it Reese Witherspoon or somebody that looks like her? I don't know. I don't
I've
know.
written it down. I've written it down. I'm gonna check this out. So thank you
It's
for
gonna
that
be like
recommendation.
your favorite movie, and there's so many good lines in it that you're just gonna be saying the lines forever.
Done. Done. That's exactly the kind of movie I'm looking for. Listen, guys, thank you for entertaining my question. We're going to get into this. I'm here with Erin Hogue. She is a Sony photographer, an adventure, sports, and action photographer producing amazing work all around the world and especially in Western Canada. I'm excited to talk to you. You've done a couple of talks at Henry's before, and when your name came up, I'm like, yes, I want to talk to her. I want to know what's going on. So please, before I get started, how are you doing and how are you keeping busy in the midst of this COVID-19 situation?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I kind of needed a break. I had a really stressful February, so it was nice to kind of chill for a little bit. And now I just have so much time to work on sort of like a log of footage that I have and a backlog of photos. And I just fostered a dog. So that has also been keeping me busy. I've wanted a dog forever and just don't have time and I'm
Is
never
this your
home enough.
first dog? This is your first dog?
I had a dog a few years ago, kind of with like an ex for a bit, but I
Yeah.
hadn't seen her in a while.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, basically
Okay.
my first dog.
Congratulations on that. And listen, I kind of described you, but I'd like you to describe the type of work that you do. What do you capture and what takes up your creative career?
So I do mostly action sports photography. So a lot of skiing, snowboarding. I go in the backcountry a lot, and we use sort of like snowmobiles to get there. And I shoot surfing in the ocean. So it's a lot of like outdoor action adventure photography and
Yeah.
some commercial photography as well.
And I'm loading up your Instagram, and the viewers, they can see it now, your Instagram page, as well as your website, erinhogue.com. There's some just remarkable images. And, the one thing that sticks out for me in the work is just your placement of people around the environment, right? It really kind of tells this story. And, I have to ask, how do you look to compose your images? I know it's a pretty difficult thing to answer in like a couple of sentences, but how do you sort of look to tell a story with people and the environment behind them?
So a lot of it is working with the athletes. And so we sort of find features together. Some features that they ride don't work well for photos, and then some work amazing for photos, and they don't work great for video.
Right,
So we
right.
kind of meet up at the beginning of the day and go out as a crew into the backcountry and look for features that are going to film well or shoot well. And then once we have an idea of the feature and I figure out how the rider is going to hit it, I try and figure out how to shoot that feature so that it makes the rider look like they're going the biggest. And we shoot it at the time when the light's on it the best. And if
Okay.
there's any way that you can kind of backlight it or play with light, I really look for things like that so that you really get more dynamic images when you can sort of play with the light.
Yeah, yeah,
Or I
yeah.
really simplistic photos. So if I can cut the majority of everything out of it, and it's just sort of a person with like a lot of sort of white snow behind, or like playing with shadows. I really like playing with shadows. So how they're hitting the light and how the shadow is working with that.
Right, right.
So it's a lot of like wandering out in circles. I basically show up to the feature, just walk in circles for a long
Listen,
time.
I'm going to talk about that and I'm going to ask about your scouting process because that's the thing. When you
Yeah.
kind of understand lighting, you understand the level of difficulty of these images, and really it adds that depth to the image where there isn't that flatness when you're shooting randomly. But before I get there, I have to ask about your journey and kind of how you got into, action sports adventure photography. When did you realize that this is what you want to, do for the rest of your life?
For me, it was pretty casual. I always knew I wanted to do photography, and so it was very much if this works out, then I'll keep doing it. If this works out, then I'll keep doing it. And
Okay,
so when I was
okay.
in high school, I loved photography, was my favorite class, and I had like my parents really wanted me to go to university, and so I was like, if I can get into university for photography, then that's what I'm going to do, and that's what I'm going to go for. And so I ended up getting into school. I think all the schools that I applied to, so Ryerson, there's only 2 university programs in Canada, so I got into one of those. So I was like, oh, I guess I'm going to school for photography. This is sweet. And then I graduated university and had always grown up looking at snowboard magazines. And I thought how cool it would be to be the person shooting the photos. And I was always more interested in the photographers than the riders. And so, which is weird, but yeah, I knew all the photographers were. And the riders.
You know what? I don't think that's weird at all. I think if that's a photographer in the making right there, right? That you're paying attention to those things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. And then there was one article in a magazine, and it's actually a friend of mine that wrote it, Scott Surface. We're friends now, but other photos. And he wrote an article in the magazine, and it was how to become an action sports photographer. And you basically, like, the article was like 4 things. Like, you buy black and like wear all black so that when you're in the backcountry, you look like a rock or a tree. You move to a mountain town, and then you shoot anyone that will ride in front of your camera, and then you just don't stop doing that. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I did.
Sometimes it's that simple, but you don't even think it's that simple. And it's someone like that telling you that kind of says, oh, wait a minute, that's exactly what I should do.
It's like, oh, it's mellow.
Amazing.
So I graduated university, and I was like, either I move to the mountains now and try this, or I start working in the commercial industry in Toronto and stay in Toronto.
Right.
So I kind of moved to Whistler, and and then just started shooting photos and just didn't stop.
Amazing.
Basically.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And listen, we have almost 20 people watching already. If you have questions, ask us in the chat. I already got a bunch of questions, so I'm going to be nice to them. I'm going to ask their questions before I get to mine. Someone asked if what is that one sport you enjoy to shoot the most? Do you get to go to the Olympics?
I haven't been to the Olympics. I have a bunch of friends that are Olympians.
Nice.
I've been to X Games, which is considered sort of the Olympics of snowboarding before snowboarding was in the Olympics.
Of course. Yeah.
So I don't know. I was at the Vancouver Olympics because it was in Whistler when I was here.
If you could only shoot one sport, what would it be though? What's your favorite?
My favorite snowboarding.
Snowboarding. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to guess, but I want to let you say it.
No, it's snowboarding. I mean, I love working with skiers, and I love shooting skiing, and they're really similar, but snowboarding wins. And I love shooting surfing, but snowboarding still wins.
I have another question here. It's great to see you. Which one of your photos are you most thrilled about, and why? I love that question, actually.
Oh, that's a really good question. It's a really hard question, too. I have a few that I love, and they're for different reasons, but mostly for like the whole story and that went behind them.
Right.
There's one that I shot that's spines in Alaska, and that one's one of my favorites because it was the last day of shooting, and they dropped me off on this like little tiny spine or knife edge that was like a foot, and so I couldn't even stand up because if I stepped backwards or forwards, I'd either fall into a like crevasse in front of me or a Bergstrom behind me, and so I just stayed sitting down. But that one was and it's like a beautiful photo, and I got to be shooting on the opposite face and jump out of a helicopter, and then I had to like ride down. So that one, the whole experience of it makes that photo one of my favorites. Another one is of Charles Reed, who's an amazing rider to work with, and it's a waterfall, and it sort of sits at the top of this hill, and I love shooting waterfalls, first of all. And so this one, I had to hike 45 minutes to get up to it, and I had to kind of fight. I'd shot it once before, and the angle I shot it from just didn't do it justice. I didn't get high enough. I didn't get close enough to it. I was kind of just trying to be nice to the crew that I was with.
Right.
And I regretted it for years and wanted to go back and actually shoot it the way that I wanted to. And so I think it was probably 2 or 3 years later, we went back and they were going to hit that waterfall again. And so I kind of had to convince the filmer that it was okay, that I stood next to the tree wearing black, and I would like blend in with the tree so that I could sort of shoot that photo from where I really
Wow.
wanted to shoot it from.
And the filmmaker said, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it took a bit of he was like, I don't know, I don't know. I was like, I'll just stand next to the tree. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Amazing. So you mentioned it a little bit, but I gotta ask this question. Do you enjoy the process of capturing more than the actual end result? Like, of the two, which do you actually enjoy more, looking at that finished product or the process in which you have to go to capture it?
Oh, that's a really good question. I like both. I think both play into each other because sometimes the process is too much because you'll go out for an entire day and get nothing. And you're like, why did I choose the hardest, most like logistically heavy, complicated thing to shoot ever when
Right.
like I could literally walk into a studio and set up some lights and take a photo or like,
Right.
you know?
My follow-up to this, the question I have to ask. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there. You were saying?
Oh no, I said not that it doesn't take skill to shoot in a studio, but it's just you don't have to worry about like your day getting ruined by a cloud
Yeah,
or
exactly. You have control over the lighting, right? There's not as many variables, right?
yeah.
I have to ask, when you were starting off, listen, adventure sports, action, like all this stuff, as if there weren't already enough variables in photography and commercial photography, it adds a whole other element to it. But I have to ask you, what were the challenges for you personally when you were getting started, looking to build your portfolio, looking to actually, get your name out there and book these amazing jobs? What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Oh, some of the challenges. There were so many. First, and this is still one that I struggle with is almost like being taken seriously or like people understanding the amount of experience that I have doing this. I feel like when I
Right.
show up, I always have to constantly, I don't know, it's like they don't realize how much I've done. Like if you don't know where I've been or what I've been doing forever, I look kind of young. So I think that that's not something that you would expect. And I'm really short and really small. So I think people don't expect me to do the things. I guess it's more like their preconceived
Huh.
notions or something. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Another thing that I struggled with was probably snowmobiling. Snowmobiling is really hard.
So that, I guess that's your primary mode of transportation when you're on these hills, right? When you're trying to get around and set up the shot, right?
Yeah, it's kind of, I tried doing it because I was struggled a little bit with the environmental impact of, not a little bit, I struggle with the environmental impact of snowmobiling.
Right.
But when you look at it like flights, like if you take one flight, that's basically your environmental impact of sledding for an entire season.
Wow.
So yeah, but it's still just like wrapping your head around that part. So I struggled with that a bit. So there was one season where I was like, no, I'm just going to use like human power to get everywhere. And
Right.
that's doing it. But if you think about it, if you were to have to walk to every single shoot that you had to go to for a year, how effective would that be and how productive would you be?
Yeah.
And like even to switch angles could take like an hour to just switch angles, or like you hike up a huge mountain and you're exhausted and you're like, okay, I need like a minute to catch my breath or to like set up or something, and you just don't have that time. So it just didn't really work. So yeah, snowmobiling's the main mode of transport. And it's really hard to do.
But I gotta say, I admire the fact that you at least consider that in the process, the environmental impact that you have in the process of capturing your images. And one thing I will say is that to be considerate, but also the fact that if you're going out there and you're creating these great pictures and you're considerate of it, and as you sort of your name grows and you have opportunities to speak, you get to share that message. So it's almost like, yes, there's a little bit of a cost there, but at least you
Yeah.
get to share that message, and hopefully other people start to take that into consideration as they go to create as well, right?
Yeah, and so that's a huge thing, like being able to sort of talk about it and push other people to consider it. And they say that once you have a connection to a place, you're a lot more likely to protect it. So most everybody that does these winter sports that goes snowmobiling cares about the environment because we all love snow. So global
Yeah.
warming is like not good for it.
Yeah.
And so everybody sort of has that in mind, and it's a matter of just figuring out ways. So there's like a new snowmobile company, Taiga, that's coming out with an electric snowmobile. So I'm
Oh,
hoping to
wow.
do some work with them and sort of help in that way. And then I did a trip last year to the Arctic, and it was all about figuring out ways to do this and then to eliminate or minimize your environmental impact. And so we used carbon offset programs to do that. And
Amazing.
carbon offset programs aren't like a full, like, oh, I'm just going to offset my carbon. It's fine that I do all the worst things in the world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But when you don't have a lot of, like, when you don't have another option, it's the only mode of transport. It's really nice to be able to give something to the people that have the knowledge and have the expertise and are actually trying to make a difference and are kind of doing the research so that we can have more alternatives as opposed to just the ones that are hurting the environment the most.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay, amazing, amazing. And I'm glad you mentioned that here for people watching. Again, it is something as you travel, especially the impact that you're having as you capture these images, is something as creators we should be more aware of than maybe we already are. I want to ask about your process and really the scouting process, because while people go on your Instagram and they see these beautiful pictures, what they might not see when they double tap on them is that there's a whole process behind them to go to map it out and to really consider how this shot is going to compose itself. So not too briefly, but tell us, what is the process in which you go out and decide to create this image? Like, what's involved here?
Yeah, so it's kind of like I said before, meeting up with a rider, finding an actual spot of something that they can ride and hit. And then it's making sure that we're there at the right time, that the sun's on it, and making sure that there's no clouds that are going to come in and take away the light, because we're using, for the most part, natural light.
Right.
And so you have to make sure that that's really good. And then a lot of it is me walking around in circles. So I'll explore a feature from every single angle. So I'll just sort of like walk around the whole thing, look at it from the top, and I'll make a plan for it. So I never want tracks in the photo. So usually there'll be an angle from the front that'll have, like, once the rider hits it once, there'll be a track in the way. So I'll usually shoot that angle first, knowing that that's the only time that I'm going to be able to shoot that angle, that it's going to look good. And then I'll sort of walk around to a different angle, and then I'll kind of go around to a different angle and shoot it from a different angle, and then kind of just work my way around. And then once I know that I've gotten at least one person from, like, a good shot of one person from a certain angle, then I'll switch angles, because if there's multiple riders, you want to get different photos for each rider. So you want to make sure you're getting it from different angles.
Right.
And then just at the end, I'll sort of do a bunch of, like, risky play angles. So once I know I have one shot of each rider, and if the rider's still hitting it, then I'll just get to play and just get to do, like, the most ridiculous attempts at angles and photos, and sort of just hope that they work out.
I love that style, and it's an approach that a lot of people have. I personally love that style, where you kind of go in, you have a shot list in mind, you've scouted your location, and you make sure to get what you need first, and then hopefully do that in an efficient way, where then you get to play, then you get to just experiment, and really you might find some things that you love after the fact. When you're kind of going through this process, are you looking to sort of, there's some people that shoot a ton of images and then they'll, kind of cull from there. But are you more conscientious and trying to just get a few shots so you don't have to go through hundreds of them? Like, what's sort of your approach to capturing something, especially when things are really fast and really moving pretty quickly?
Yeah, I like to set up and not have, like, because I started shooting film first. So when I switched over to digital, it was like, you just shoot so many photos, but then you still end up with about the same amount of really good photos.
Right.
And I find that if you just, I think I got it, I'm just going to press the button, I think I got it. Like, I shot 100. There's got to be a good one in there. I found that was giving me worse results than if I were to, like, actually stop and, like, look at the picture and make sure that every single thing in the picture and, like, do that full scan of the frame and make sure that, like, everything is the best that it can be, and then wait for the person to do, like, if it's a lifestyle photo, wait for the person to sort of do that one sort of movement or turn where they look the best, and then take the photo, as opposed to just holding it down and being like, I got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a level of patience, and I think maybe even if you shoot film, you kind of you have that transferable skill that you can kind of bring to that, where you do really compose the image. You create a picture more than take the picture, right? I have to ask you, I got another question here. So when you're going to these locations, and especially places that are harder to get to, are you taking all your gear with you every single time, or is there like a select kit that you'll build out and you're, coming back to maybe a home base of some kind? Like, how does that sort of logistical part work?
I carry everything with me all the time. I'm like notorious for having the world's heaviest backpack
Oh
always.
my goodness.
Because I know that the one thing that I don't bring is the thing that I'm going to want that day.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, and the only thing that I don't do that with is lights. Lights, I used to bring them a lot more, and just sort of like waiting for the right circumstance, because it's so much, like lights don't like working in snow because you're basically trying to make them work in water.
Right.
And so flashes don't like that. And it slows everything down for the whole day. So it has to really be worth it for the crew to want you to, or like want to let you to set up lights. And natural light for the most part works the best, but I love working with flashes. And so it's snowing or that kind of thing, and then I just wait for the opportunity and like hope that I can use them that day. So yeah, but other than that, like I bring all the lenses with me all the time, and the only one that I won't always bring is like a 400 mil. Depending if I'm sledding, it's fine, but if I'm walking all day, I'll be more selective of when I'll bring that, because I'll know the type of riders and the type of situations that I'll need that lens for. And because it's like one thing that I can like kind of let go of weight with, I'll pick when I can bring that. But then the rest of them I always just bring and carry.
And listen, since we're talking about gear and this is Henry's, we got to talk about your kit. And no surprise here, because you are a Sony photographer and they're the ones that hooked it up and allowed us to have this conversation in this platform. What are your go-to cameras? And tell me as well your top 3 lenses for the work that you do. I know you have a bunch of them, but what are your key cameras and what are your top 3 lenses? So
my top camera is the A9. It shoots 20 frames a second. Ooh. And yeah, it's amazing. So before the A9, I used to never, like a lot of people think that as soon as the athlete goes off the feature, like the photographer just holds the shutter down and just lets it go.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I know with snowboarding when the style of the trick is going to be the best. So I don't like relying on the gear, but because the A9 shoots 20 frames per second, I've like started to rely on that more, because within those 20 frames, it's likely going to get the best part of the trick. I still struggle with it. I'm not really like full because if I know when it's going to I know when it's going to be. But for shooting surfing, the 20 frames a second is amazing because I've been shooting a lot of surfing in Tofino, and so you need that you never know where the waves are going to break. It's basically a free. So you need that extra speed. So anyways, that's my favorite. It also has really good weather sealing. I was like amazing. And the batteries hold up in the cold so well. I've never had batteries that work this well, like minus 25. They're still going.
It's well past the minus 10 mark where most manufacturers will stop working. So, I had to ask that, is your cameras hold up? They must hold up if you're capturing those images.
Oh yeah. And especially on those days, like a lot of other batteries, you'll just take your camera out of your camera bag and the battery will be dead, which is super annoying. So then you have to like leave batteries like in your pockets or like anywhere you can so that they stay warm. Yeah. And with the A9, I just leave it in the backpack in the camera and it's just ready to go when I take it out of the bag. It's like doesn't get that, which is like huge for me. And then I usually use for lenses, I usually use the 70 to 200. That's kind of my main go-to. And then I love anything that'll stop down to 1.4 or 2.8. Don't use a ton for action, but for anything commercial or anything lifestyle, I love having like that really like shallow depth of field. So all my lenses kind of go there. I use the 50 a lot for lifestyles. Nice. And then if I want to like get creative and play with an image or like certain features, Fisheye is amazing. And I really want to like use my fisheye to get one of those like amazing photos where the wave is just going over like
Yeah.
or whoever or whatever and do that. But the waves in Tofino don't do that. So I have to go to Hawaii or Fiji or somewhere where the waves are doing that. And I haven't had the chance to.
Yeah, it's called a business trip, folks, and we got to find a way to make that happen sooner rather than later for Erin here, okay? One of the things. Sorry, I was going to say one of the things that Sony is known for across the industry is their autofocus, especially with respect to like face, eye detection, and whatever it is. They are fantastic at autofocus. But I like to ask how creators in their space use focusing. Some people use manual, some people use single point, some people use continuous. So what's your go-to autofocus setting? If someone's coming down a hill on a snowboard, how are you setting up your camera with respect to focusing?
That's hard. Okay, so it depends. For the most part, when I'm shooting snowboarding, I'll still shoot, like I'll pre-focus everything. Just because I know where the rider is going to be when. And it's really hard for a camera to know, like, what to focus on when. And because I already know where the rider is going to be, I know I'm going to get it 100% of the time. And I know that the camera is going to get it 99.9% of the time. So
sorry, the Skype cut out just for a second. Can you repeat that last part again? Sorry.
Oh, I know that I'm just going to get it 100% of the time. So I don't want to like rely on the technology to do it. But when I'm shooting surfing in the ocean, that is when autofocus is like your best friend. You need it so much. And so I'll shoot in like continuous autofocus, and it'll just like figure it out and figure out how to get the rider and not the water on the outside of the lens, which
it's like witchcraft. This camera, Sony somehow figured it out where they know exactly, in these environments to know where the subject is and the background is.
Yeah, and it's never like a lot of cameras struggle and will focus on the wave as opposed to the rider. And for some reason, so like, oh yeah, that's a person. I got this. Don't worry about it. Like,
yeah. And listen, I should also mention, guys, if you have a few more questions, there's still time. Ask in the chat below. I have one question here, and a comment and a question. Ron says, congratulations on winning Uprising in February. Did you pick the concept of the video, or was it a group collaboration?
For that one, I picked the concept. It's not my ideal format of a contest. So for those who don't know, you have 3 days to shoot and put together a 3 to 5 minute slideshow. And then it goes up in front of 1,000 people. So it goes up to like a majority of the locals in Whistler. And it's like the most fun event. Everybody's cheering. Everybody gets super into it. So it's a really fun event to go to. But for me to have to like put together and put up your best work and have it judged in front of 1,000 people is not like my
that
favorite.
Sounds so intimidating, actually. I was going to ask what is Uprising, and you're describing it. And right now it sounds pretty intimidating.
It's insane. And this year, so usually it's just they pick like a selection of photographers, and usually it's photographers who are like newer into the action sports realm.
Right.
Just because those are the photographers that have the time and can do it and aren't busy with other projects. But then this year, for whatever reason, everyone was available. So it was like the top, and they wanted to make it sort of like an up-and-comer thing, and it was an agency putting it on. So they were able to get like 4 of the other like top photographers in the industry. And I wasn't supposed to be the only girl, but I ended up being the only girl. So it was like me going against Scott Surface, who wrote that article in that magazine that made me decide to want to shoot surfing.
Oh my goodness.
Another amazing photographer, Ruben, Mason Machant, and another one, Mitch, who shoots like all of the Whistler Blackcomb photos that you see on all of their advertising. So like really, and they all had like 10 years experience on top of me. And I was just like, this is so intense. So anyway, so it was like, really intense. So I only decided to do the contest because I had this idea that I thought people would really want to see, and is like a really important idea that hasn't been done in this format before and that people would really relate to. So that was the only reason that I like decided to do the contest. So I was kind of like, oh, I really hope my mentee or the up and coming photographer that I work with wants to do this idea, because I know it'll be successful, but yeah, I know it'll be successful and I know it'll sort of play to my strengths. I just hope that they can sort of like get behind it. And
Amazing, amazing. Well, you won, so congratulations. It
yes.
worked. That's
Yeah, and
amazing.
we shot moms who are like snowboarders who were sponsored or professional athletes and have
Wow.
kids and are still snowboarding and still sponsored and still doing all those things. So we just show like that side of motherhood that hasn't been shown before.
Well, I'm gonna ask a favor. I'm gonna go stalk your Instagram to see if it's there. But if you can post a picture on your story, guys, Erin Hogue, I have her social handle here. Let's go check that out. I'd love to see the series if it's available. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a slideshow. Yeah, it's great.
Fantastic, fantastic. If you have more questions, this is your last chance. But you know what? I think I might end it off on this. But guys, we're gonna go to Instagram. So we do 30 minutes on YouTube, and then we go to Instagram where you guys can engage in the conversation. We have more to talk about, and this is gonna carry us to that Instagram conversation. You wrote earlier today, I think you wrote a caption because you do talks. I love your talks. I've only been to one of them, but I was sold after that one. You said other people don't know shit about what's possible for you. And that's something that just really, really resonated for me. More, it's not really a question, but can you just go on that tangent? Can you tell us what you were thinking when you said that? What were you trying to communicate?
Yeah, I think that challenge something. I forget what the question was, but anyways, everybody that when I said I wanted to be an action sports photographer, or when I said I wanted to shoot snowboarding, I didn't tell that many people in the beginning because they generally reacted with, well, that's not, you can't do that. And then when I wanted to buy a snowmobile, I told like one or two people, and one of them was like, one of the guys just straight up said like, girls can't snowmobile. It's like the hardest thing ever. You'll never be able to do that. And like, you'll
Jeez.
never be able to get people to want to take you out with them. And then, yeah, and then another guy was like, straight up told me after my first season of shooting, I think I sold one photo because I had no clue what I was doing. And I was like kind of upset about it. And he just straight up said to me, he's like, well, there's two types of people in the world, those that make it and those that don't. And he's like, and you're
Wow.
one of the ones that's not going to make it. And I was like,
Wow. I
what?
thought the West Coast was a lot nicer than this. What is going on here? This sounds like an East Coast mentality here.
And it was, no, but it was like on the West Coast too. It's just, everyone is just
Jeez.
going to tell you like why you can't and that you shouldn't. And I was like, cool, then maybe I'll never make it, but I'm going to
Yeah.
spend this like 4 years to trying. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll just go get a job doing something else. This isn't a big deal. Stop freaking
Yeah.
out, people. Fine.
I absolutely love it. And it's one of these things is why not? Why not go and do something you actually love and enjoy and throw everything at it and try to make it as opposed to just kind of sticking to the status quo, right? I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and you can always go back to the status quo after you did it. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
That'll always be there, folks. Listen, Erin, this has been amazing. Where can people find more of your work and see more of the awesome stuff that you're doing?
So my Instagram, Erin Hogue, so ERINHOGUE, and then my website is the same, but just .com. And then hopefully there'll be something, some behind the scenes video content coming out really soon. So if you follow me on Instagram or,
Ooh,
yeah, follow me on Instagram, then you'll
there
find
you
out
go.
all about getting released.
There you go. That's a teaser, folks. So now you got to hit that follow button because something dope is on its way. For those of you watching, thank you so much. And we're going to go on Instagram and we're going to do this again. And we're going to talk about a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So thank you guys for